Danielle always believed family meant protection. Not perfection, not constant agreement, just protection, especially when it came to children. That belief shattered during a Sunday family dinner beneath crystal chandeliers and soft piano music. Her 12-year-old son, Ethan, had spent 3 straight weeks building a small solar-powered model car for his school innovation fair. Every evening after homework, he sat at the kitchen table carefully attaching wires, testing tiny motors, repainting panels after mistakes. He was proud of it. Proud in the pure way only children can be before the world teaches them to doubt themselves. That night, he carried the model carefully into his grandparents' dining room with both hands like it was something precious, because to him, it was. "Grandpa, look," Ethan said nervously. "It actually runs using sunlight." For one brief moment, Danielle thought the evening might finally feel warm. Then Hannah laughed, sharp, loud, cruel enough to freeze the entire room. "That's not even a real invention," her sister said while swirling champagne in her glass. "It looks like a middle school glue project." A few people chuckled awkwardly. Then her brother laughed too. Even Danielle's father smiled into his wine like it was harmless entertainment. Ethan stood completely still. The tiny car trembled slightly in his hands. Danielle waited for someone, anyone, to stop it. Nobody did. Hannah leaned back in her chair casually. "He's a kid," she said. "He'll get over it." And somehow, that sentence hurt Danielle more than the laughter itself. Because children do remember moments like that. The exact second they realize the people who are supposed to encourage them are capable of making them feel small. Danielle watched her son carefully. His eyes didn't water. His voice didn't shake. Instead, he quietly placed the car down on the table and said something that silenced the entire room. "I'll never forget this." The room went still. Even Hannah's smile faded. Because suddenly everyone remembered Ethan wasn't just a child sitting quietly at the table. He was listening, understanding, becoming. Danielle stood immediately. Without raising her voice, she gently picked up the small solar car, wrapped one arm around her son's shoulders, and walked toward the door. Nobody stopped them. Not her father, not her mother, not Hannah. The silence behind them felt heavier than yelling ever could. That night, Ethan barely spoke. Danielle tucked him into bed while he stared quietly at the ceiling. After several minutes, he whispered, "I worked really hard on it." Danielle felt her heart crack. Not because of the project. Because she realized her son had just experienced something she knew far too well herself. What it feels like to be dismissed by people whose approval you once hoped mattered. She sat beside him and brushed hair gently away from his forehead. "You did nothing wrong," she said softly. "But why would they laugh?" he asked. Danielle didn't answer immediately, because explaining cruelty to a child without destroying their softness is one of the hardest things a parent can do. Finally, she said quietly, "Sometimes people make fun of things they don't understand. And sometimes people confuse kindness with weakness." Ethan nodded slowly. Then he asked the question that changed something inside her forever. "Are we supposed to pretend it didn't hurt?" Danielle stared at him for a long moment, because that was exactly what she had done her entire life. At family dinners, at business meetings, during endless moments where her contributions were quietly expected, but rarely appreciated. She had spent years keeping peace inside relationships that slowly exhausted her emotionally. But suddenly she realized something important. If she kept teaching her son to stay silent in moments that wounded him, he would grow up believing disrespect was something love required him to tolerate. And Danielle refused to pass that lesson down another generation. The next morning, she made several decisions quietly. Not dramatic decisions, not reckless ones, clear ones. For years, Danielle had managed most of the financial structures connected to the family foundation and several shared business holdings. She handled the paperwork nobody appreciated, the planning nobody noticed, the stability everyone benefited from, because she was dependable, and dependable people are often taken for granted until they stop carrying everything. By noon, Danielle officially withdrew her financial support from several family-managed projects and partnerships tied directly to her personal accounts and legal oversight. Not out of revenge, out of boundaries. Because for the first time in her life, she realized protecting her son mattered more than protecting family appearances. Her phone exploded almost immediately. Her father called first, then Hannah. Then group messages started flooding in. "You're overreacting. It was just a joke. Why are you turning this into drama?" Danielle ignored all of them. Instead, she walked into Ethan's room. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor trying to repair one of the damaged wheels on the solar car. The room smelled faintly of glue and warm electronics. "You rebuilding it?" she asked. He nodded. "I think I can make it better this time." Danielle smiled softly, and suddenly she realized something extraordinary about children. They still try again after heartbreak. Adults are the ones who teach them to stop. Over the following days, the consequences spread quickly through the family. Projects stalled, accounts froze. Several foundation events lost sponsorship after Danielle formally redirected her funding elsewhere. Panic replaced confidence almost overnight, and for the first time, her family finally noticed how much of their world quietly depended on her. Her mother eventually called crying, "Please don't destroy the family over one mistake." Danielle closed her eyes, because that sentence revealed the real problem perfectly. Nobody asked why Ethan had been hurt. They only cared that consequences had finally arrived. "This isn't about punishment," Danielle said calmly. "It's about accountability." Weeks later, Danielle announced the launch of something new, the Orion Scholarship Initiative, a mentorship and innovation program supporting young students interested in science, engineering, and creative design, especially children who lacked encouragement at home. She funded the program herself. The first image on the organization's website was Ethan holding the rebuilt solar-powered car beside the words, "Every dream deserves protection before it deserves applause." The story spread quickly online. Teachers shared it, parents related to it, young students submitted applications from all over the country, and unexpectedly, the initiative became far bigger than Danielle ever imagined. Not because people cared about family conflict, because they recognized something universal inside the story, the deep human need to feel believed in. One evening after a successful fundraising event, Ethan sat beside Danielle eating ice cream outside a bookstore displaying a magazine feature about Orion. He looked up at her quietly. "Did you do all this because of me?" Danielle smiled gently. "No," she said. "I did this because nobody should feel small for dreaming out loud." Months passed before Danielle's family finally showed up at her door together. Her father looked older somehow, her mother nervous, and Hannah looked humbled, not defensive, not sarcastic, just honest. Danielle stepped outside and closed the front door gently behind her. For several moments, nobody spoke. Then, Hannah finally looked down and said, "I was cruel to Ethan because I didn't know how to deal with my own bitterness." Danielle stayed silent. Tears filled Hannah's eyes. "I spent years measuring people by status and appearances," she admitted quietly. "And your son made me realize how ugly that mindset really is." Then she handed Danielle an envelope. Inside was a donation for Orion. Not performative, not extravagant, just sincere. "I want to help build something better," Hannah whispered. Danielle looked at her carefully. Some apologies don't erase pain, but genuine accountability can begin healing. Her father spoke next. I should have stopped it immediately, he admitted softly. I failed him. Danielle nodded once. Because finally, after years of avoidance, someone in that family was telling the truth. A few weeks later, Ethan stood on stage at a youth innovation conference holding the rebuilt solar car in front of hundreds of students, educators, and community leaders. His voice remained calm as he spoke into the microphone. Sometimes people laugh at things before they understand them, he said. But that doesn't mean you stop building. The audience erupted into applause. Danielle glanced toward the back row. Her family stood there quietly listening. Not leading, not controlling, not performing, just listening. And honestly, that mattered more than revenge ever could. Because in the end, this story was never really about a dinner table argument or a broken science project. It was about something deeper. The moment a mother realized that protecting her child sometimes means breaking cycles that entire families normalize, and the moment a young boy learned something life-changing far earlier than most adults ever do. People who mock your dreams are not defining your worth. They are revealing the limits of their own imagination.